And if it's 70%, then you got to bring in staff and control it for 90.
No.
So how long
Wait
is
until
it?
just
Just
now.
now.
You ready?
50 seconds. You
Well,
ready?
approximately 10 minutes, no driving.
50 seconds to count that.
Because you don't realize how long
Give him 60.
Pulling up to a corner intersection.
And looking around, or pulling every.
He runs one lot now. Now that
In
means you
Collins
have
and
to cut
Cuba.
right through the middle of the wetland.
Yeah,
But that would be a smoother
I leave tomorrow.
deal.
You had turn, you can fly to.
That's
I do mine too.
Pam sick?
Yeah, this was when right around when I was flying for my mom's birthday, so.
When was birthday?
We all ready on your end, Stephen?
We are set.
I told you to-
We're on.
My anniversary from my first marriage was October 23rd. I like to forget that day.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is 3 p.m. Thursday, October 20th, 2016. Time for the meeting of the Gateway Services Community Development District Board of Supervisors. We have a quorum. Please stand and join us in a pledge to our flag and country. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I know the feeling.
Thank you very much. If you have a noise-making machine, please put it on mute for the balance of the meeting. If you wish to speak to the board, there are forms on the shelf near the door. Mr. Manager, do we have folks who would like to speak to the board this evening?
Yes, we do. We have one so far. Ed Tinkle would like to talk about the consent agenda.
Please proceed, Mr. Tinkle.
Thank you. Ed Tinkle, 11180 Bent Pine Drive. About a week and a half ago, Chris and Terry and I met with John from Bentley Electric, and we're looking at this Griffin Drive issue as another alternative that had not been looked at this point. It's on the consent agenda, and I believe that this is an item that needs to be further discussion and maybe even deferred over to some stuff that Chris and or April or both are going to talk about later on. But
It'll be removed from the consent agenda as soon as we get there.
okay, will it be moved down the road for further discussion?
Yes.
I think the point that I wanted to bring out is that we do have a cost estimate for another alternative that I think has some merit for consideration. That's all I had.
Well, thank you. Anybody else? Anything?
That's all we have.
Oh, my gosh, all right. Okay, we have two committee reports from the Roadway Landscape Advisory Committee. Doris, you want to make any comments about those long involved and I was not sure what they were trying to say reports?
Do you have any questions about them? Kathy Flaherty, Landscaping Committee.
Yes, I do.
Okay. Well, I guess.
Would you tell me exactly what it is you were trying to get across to us, those longish items?
Which one?
We'll start with the one from June 28th.
I think we were just talking about different things on the roadway. Because there were some problems, the mowing schedule, and there were some problems about trees. So they were wondering about, we were told that they were going to cut down some trees, and they were going to come back to us about that. You have to be more specific. That was,
I would like for you to be more specific in who's going to cut down what trees.
they were, I guess Mainscape was about trimming, and then there was some other, about trimming some, well, now landscaping. The trees were, Elle was bringing back something about the trees. There was a company that was supposed to trim the trees. I think they did it already. That was, we were just discussing when it was going to be done and who was going to be doing it, and that was,
May I assume that you're satisfied with what was done?
yes, that was the last time when we met in,
June.
no, this is, no, October,
is
so
October.
September. We were satisfied in September.
Oh, all right. And what
You
about
don't-
the July 26th?
I know that one of the concerns was the peanuts and that there was weeds growing up, and JB suggested a herbicide for it. And we were talking about the FPL easement, if that, they were gonna put in
The
something
gate.
to gates, right? And since then, those gates haven't put in.
Did we go with the cable? Is there a cable across?
And there,
Yes, sir.
right
Okay,
now,
I think
there's.
that's what the recommendation
yeah.
was, okay.
Okay, so are you satisfied with what?
Well, we,
happened?
so far we are. We have other things that are on the agenda. We're just checking up, I know for our November one next week, just to double check that things we had asked to be done are being done.
Okay.
And we do keep up with things that we do suggest. Okay. I know that there was some issues at Eagle Point with their trimming, and that was resolved too.
Yeah, I would recommend coming out of these meetings, if there's anything for awareness that we can call out, as almost like a summary. I mean, we get the meeting minutes and we read through them, at least now they're starting to be included. But if there's anything specific that you want us to be aware of, let's call
Like a
those out.
highlight section?
Yeah, let's just, we'll call them, executive summary or just something so we can, go through, and if there's any particular items that the committee needs to follow up on or things that we need to be aware of, it's just easier to call that out. Because sometimes when we go through the meeting minutes,
Yeah.
it's hard to pull out exactly what items are still open or things we need to be aware of.
Old or red or?
Yeah, I don't care, just,
And we're looking at July's minutes and here, we're
June's too.
June and July, but the latest are July, so I'm assuming you met in August, September, October?
We're meeting Tuesday for October. We have met in August and September, yes.
I just want to make sure that the work that you're doing, that if there's anything that we need to be aware of, that it stays in front of us, so it doesn't get lost.
And-
Okay.
And I know one of the points in one of the minutes was that if they weren't brought to the board, they weren't bringing them to the
Yeah.
board, and now they are, so, okay,
Any other questions for Kathleen?
No.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. All right, now we're going to go to the consent agenda. Board members may remember that a few meetings ago, the Griffin Drive street light item was discussed. And at the end of the discussion, a motion was made and seconded and agreed to that item be tabled. Now, we cannot consider this on part of the consent agenda. We'll wait until we get down into supervisors' comments. And if a member wants to make a motion second to remove it from the table and discuss it at this time, we will follow that procedure. The other items in the consent agenda.
So just real quick, Bill, so if there's any discussion on that topic, we wait for supervisor comments?
Wait, yes,
Okay.
please.
All right.
The other items in the consent agenda start with 4A, approval of the September 1st meeting, Lee County Sheriff's Office detail, contract spreadsheet, and the maintenance inspection report. Are there members who would like to discuss in detail any items of the consent agenda?
Yeah, the minutes and this guy.
Okay, I have 4A and the maintenance inspection report.
No.
And
But again, if we approve, I'm kind of confused. If we approve the consent agenda items and then we talk about them later in supervisor comments,
well, that was just on the minutes, where we're either gonna approve the minutes or make corrections. But if you want to talk about items in the minutes, you can do that at supervisor.
okay, I'll do that.
So you don't want to.
No, I don't have any contention with anything that's in there, but I do want to get some updates on a number of items.
All right.
I want to get a finding on what's going on here.
You want to talk about the items on
Yeah.
4E, the
So
maintenance.
I can do that in supervisor comments, that's fine.
Oh, all right. Anyone else have any items that they want to talk specifically about under the consent agenda items A, B, D, or E? Motion for approval, please.
Motion to approve consent agenda items A, B, D, and E.
Thank you. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion second. Any further conversation? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 4-0. All right, we're down to staff reports already. District Council, Mr. Paris?
Just a few things on the Tract L and the Area 9 conveyances. We had a good meeting with WCI and Area 9 to discuss the access issue, and we had some various scenarios and concepts that we all talked about. It was April, Tyler, myself, and Chris, and we met with the folks in WCI, and it was a good meeting. It was a very good meeting, and Tyler was kind enough to allow us to use his meeting room, sort of halfway point. And so we have a couple of approaches we're going to try taking and reconvene by phone to keep this rolling on a regular basis to try to obtain resolution.
Is this primarily to get a permanent easement in that area?
Well, to the permanent easement, that's convenient, a convenient permanent easement.
I'm sorry.
A convenient permanent easement.
A
convenient.
permanent easement.
That will be acceptable to the regulatory agencies also. That's one of the approaches.
Okay.
And so we all have little tasks to do to follow up on that. On Tract L, we didn't discuss it that day. We're going to have a follow-up meeting on Tract L to discuss any issues and see if we can come to a recommendation to come back to the board, but that was for another day on the Tract L. Fairway Lakes, I've drafted a letter for April to send to the Fairway Lakes folks saying at the end of November, that's it. No more as far as paying for lights. And April has taken upon herself to be the contact person for anybody who gets that letter. So she needs probably her battle armor when that letter goes out. So you may be getting some calls after that too. I would not be
We're
surprised.
hoping the first call is to say, why don't you transfer it to our bill?
Yeah. So that'll happen. And I guess there's an application now to the South Florida and for the county for a school over there, I believe. Is that Fairway Lakes? Creative Schools?
The second lot down off of the corner is the World Schools or?
Creative Schools or
Yeah,
something like
Creative
that?
World Schools. And then in my operations manager reports, we also have somebody interested in the very corner lot there as well. And that would be the fire department.
So that's what's going with Fairway Lakes on Tract L, Area 9. On the road turnover, unfortunately, I got sidetracked the last week. My wife had some surgeries that tied me up, but I'm shooting.
We're delighted she's doing well.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, she has to put up with me, so that's the first indication that she frowns at me, that she's doing well. I'm shooting for the third week of November to meet with John Ferdima to sort of do a run-through of the documents and hopefully get the documents to him by the end of November to the county.
All right. Question for our council? Thank you very much, Tony. District Engineer, Tyler?
Hello. I'm gonna turn this thing. Hello, I'm Tyler Wainwright. I'm with Tetra Tech. There is one item we've got on the agenda tonight. It is the review of pre-qualification packages for the Lake Bank projects. So there's a memo in there just summarizing what we've done. A couple months back, I think in June, we advertised for contractors who submit pre-qualification packages to do work on the Lake Bank projects that are upcoming. We met with district staff, kind of went through the packages. A total of 8 vendors submitted. We're recommending to approve 4 of them to submit bids in the future projects. And if you have any questions on that, I'd be happy to answer them.
Board members have questions?
No.
When is our target start? I mean, just ballpark at this point.
Start for construction?
Yeah. Or
Probably
actually, let's say
January.
project start. Let's say vendor selection, and when we start doing, pre-scoping meetings or.
Survey will be complete probably not this week, probably next week. And plans will probably follow 1 to 2 weeks after that. So whatever board meeting that lines up with, we'll get some plans before the board then And then as soon as we get approval on those, we'll move forward with bidding. So we'll probably bid December, probably build January timeframe.
So beginning of next year. So have we, and I don't know if this is Tyler or Ed or Chris, what does our oversight or our management, project management look like for this? Are we going to require the vendor to have a dedicated project manager, and then who on our side is ultimately responsible for the project? And that,
I mean, I guess
Chris isn't in the room, but.
I mean, I guess it's sort of up to Gateway. I mean, we can certainly provide construction services during construction to oversee the project. If that's something that Gateway would like for us to do, we'd be happy to do that. If Gateway would like to have staff do it with, our assistance, that's another route we can take.
And the reason why I'm bringing this up is in light of other projects that we've had, where I think there's been some opportunities for us to have more oversight on our end. I think we need to strongly consider before work gets started how we internally are going to manage and oversee this project. The fact that we didn't necessarily allocate funds to have a dedicated project manager or someone on staff that can be responsible. Ed, if you want to.
Yeah, I'd ask Chris, and I don't know if he got with Tyler and give him the benefit of the doubt, but the question was, can we use SRF funding to, if we did it in-house, can we use SRF funding to supplement that cost?
Yes, that's the
Some,
question.
up north, it used to be that you couldn't do that, but that was 20 years ago.
Yeah, and the only reason I'm saying that because from my experience when if I run projects or whatever, we have resource allocations decked up against the project. So we secure funding, and part of that is to cover resources. So that's a question that we need to have Chris find out if we can use funding for a resource, because this is too big of a project for us to not have a dedicated resource that is ultimately responsible for the success and the accountability. And I know Chris has got a lot other things on his plate, so I can't imagine that he would be a dedicated project manager. And Tetra Tech can have some oversight, but I'd much rather have an in-house person who is on staff to be responsible for the oversight of the project.
Well, the other thing is, since this is SRF funding, we're going to be somewhat
We may be restricted.
under their deal and
Right,
restricted as
exactly.
to what they will accept as far as project inspection services.
Is that
too,
something
so-
you had thought about, Ed?
Well, I know, just from past experience with that, but down here, I don't know what the rules are. This is where we have to rely on.
But as far as having dedicated staff, someone to oversee as a project manager for that project, would you agree with that or
I
disagree?
cannot believe that SRF will allow you to spend $6 million of their money without having some type of on-site inspection.
Okay. So with that being said, if we can use that funding for a resource, that's something we need to start looking at immediately as far as trying to find someone that might fit that bill. I don't even know what, for that type of project, what that funding might look like in dollars, but I think it's something we need to move on quickly and start, putting something out to find that person.
I mean, as far as getting SRF money to hire, I mean, you're talking about hiring a Gateway staff
Yeah,
employee?
a project manager.
They wouldn't let you finance it through SRF. I don't think they would be able to, and we can double check, but I don't believe they'll let you do that.
Okay, then we need to probably think of
But
another
you-
way.
You will double check on that for us, right?
Yes, sir, I'll double check.
They had a term for it. I
Which
remember
staff
when I
members
was doing work,
qualify?
but you could not.
Well, that's the point.
I don't remember the specific language, but there's something to the effect of you can't use the loan for staffing or things like that.
Between supplement and supplant, probably. That's the old,
Yeah.
old rule.
So if we determine that, go ahead.
We asked Tyler what the qualifications should be.
Well, yeah, I mean, my point is, if SRF funding will not allow us to use those allocated funds for a project manager, then we need to look at maneuvering dollars in other places to bring someone on. I mean, I think if there's a justification for bringing an additional headcount on to oversee a $6 million project, this is that project.
You mean you don't want it to be in-house and a subcontractor? of
I don't want a
somebody else?
subcontractor, I want a staff resource.
My question again becomes, which staff member or members are qualified?
Well, that's an assessment that we make. If we don't have anyone on staff that meets those qualifications, then we need to bring somebody on.
How long will this project take?
Year.
It depends what you define as the project. Are you talking about the first phase of 13 lakes? You're probably looking at 2-3 years. You've got, I think, 65 in total of just Gateway
Exactly.
Lakes, so, I mean, you're talking
Therefore,
about.
this is potentially something that could be a 6-year, 7-year.
This could be a 10-year, I mean, ongoing.
You will
Therefore-
not stop maintaining lakes. You will
Okay,
maintain lakes
so
forever in
therefore,
Gateway.
It could be the need, is that what you're going at? I
Yeah.
hope, is that there might need to be a new.
We need an FTE for a project
got it.
manager, regardless if it's SRF funding, great. If not, we need to allocate dollars for that.
Okay, so there should be some type of indication within the minutes to indicate that we need to be trying to find somebody of those qualifications, and there should be a coordination with Tetra Tech as to what the qualification should be.
I'd say what I would ask is that we note it in the minutes that the item was brought up and discussed, and I would ask Tetra Tech and Chris and even Ed to be a part of determining whether SRF funding is, if we can use the funding for that. If not, if it's an internal position, what do the qualifications look like? And what is a ballpark scale for that position?
Well, even if it's an external position, if it has to become external, they should both meet the same criteria, right?
Yes, they would meet the same criteria. But my preference would be that it would be an in-house
No problem.
person of staff.
No problem.
And then the next board meeting, if we can have that information, and then we can move that to a motion and get it moving.
Do you feel you have your marching orders?
Yes, sir. I mean, I guess is the management company or staff going to put together the job description, or are you looking for help for us, or who wants to do that?
We can work together on the qualifications and what you would recommend.
Okay.
for that
So
position.
first of all, we need to know definitely from the state what they will allow, what they prefer, what's been successful in the past, those kind of things.
Yes, sir. We'll look at the requirements as far as inspections go. There are some. I know they require that you have oversight on the project, so we'll make sure what those are. And then as far as the funding aspects from the SRF loan, we'll double check that and then work with staff to start putting together some recommendations.
So it's two issues. The one issue is how is it going to, or how is that party going to be paid? One issue. The other issue is what's the qualifications we need to be looking for
Yep.
to have somebody that really can handle that and can own that job.
And I would say, since we've already approved 2017 budget, because this is a new item, we would have to look in the budget to see where we could squeeze in order to get the money.
So that ought to be part of the motion as well.
Yep. So we'll have all that in consideration by the next board meeting.
Won't we, Tyler?
Are
Yes,
you
sir.
okay?
I'm good.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think there's another thing we might be overlooking here. I'm not yet positive, I want to hear from Tyler, that this is a full-time job.
Oh, absolutely.
I do not believe it's a
Well-
full-time job, in which that complicates it a little bit. But again, back to the SRF, because I'd want to hear from Tetra Tech, because the engineering firm or any other consultant that you would hire are certainly eligible to do this. It's you using your own staff is what I think you're going to find out is the prohibition. But I just have questions as to if we hire somebody, would this create a need for a full-time job? I don't think it does, which means if we hire somebody, do they understand that this is a part-time thing?
Well-
And what would be their other, how else do they fit into the organization?
Well, let's not get too
Just
detailed
details.
on that until
Yeah.
Tyler gets us the
Yeah.
rules, Margaret.
And Tyler, you might, as that being option one, what we just talked about, and option two, how much would your firm charge to be doing that oversight? So we have the ability to see which route we'd like to go. Because it may be that it's more cost effective for us to just have your firm do the oversight.
Sure. And, I mean, I think when we did the funding or the budget for the SRF loan, I think the reason why it went from 5 million to 6 million was partly to include those services. So I think you've already sort of budgeted for those. And I mean, we're gonna have to have some construction involvement, to make certifications to the state, to sign pay apps, things like that. So, I mean, definitely having an on-staff person that can be here every single day, would be a benefit for sure. But, I mean, you're still gonna have some overlap with with Tetra Tech providing construction services.
And I think, Ed, to answer your question, I think, part of the things that we're missing is an overall PMO, someone that, has a project management background that might be more on the engineering side, but could oversee the ponds project, or, there's always multiple projects going on. So the full-time position, I think, might be warranted if we just look at the scope of work that we're going to have in our, whether it's capital or other things. But again, I don't want to go too far down that road, but I'm thinking that may not be a full-time job, but I bet you there's other responsibilities as far as project management that we could definitely need, and look at the meter project as one example. Yeah. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Margaret, any more? Gary?
Joe, none of this topic.
Tyler, do you have anything else for us?
I think-
Mr. Chairman, I think.
Yeah.
He's asking for
I think he's gonna ask you for action to adopt the recommendations as to which firms to be considered pre-qualified, which ones not to, and for staff to send out the required notices.
Correct, yeah, I think there needs to be a vote on the approval, right?
Yes. That's
So
right.
Amanda,
so
motion?
that's for these four that you're requesting that they be approved as pre-qualified.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
And not
That's-
qualify the other, and all get notices of the pre-qualification or rejection of
Correct.
pre-qualification.
That's my motion.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Yes.
Thank you. Before we vote, Tyler, would you read the names of the companies that we've approved for the listening and watching audience?
Yes, sir, we are recommending to deem qualified TSI Disaster Recovery, Marine Contracting Group, Inc., Metro Equipment Services, Inc., and Extreme Golf Course Underwater Solutions, doing business as Extreme Divers.
But they have a restriction on what they can bid, correct?
Yes, sir. As we noted in the memo, there is a restriction that one contractor would not be able to submit bids on projects which require performance and payment bonds.
We've heard the recommendation, we have a motion, and we have a second. Are we ready to vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 4-0, Mr. Manager. Tyler, anything else?
I told Mr. Neubauer I would give him a detailed verbal update of our South Florida meeting at the last meeting. So, to make good on that promise, this is regarding the Daniels Preserve area. We're talking about turning over lakes and wetlands. So we met with representatives of Worthington and a bunch of folks from South Florida. And I believe we have clarified that all of the areas have been certified to the district. The wetlands have completed their monitoring requirements. And there's essentially some paperwork that needs to be taken care of to complete that transfer. And once that is complete, we'll be coming back before the board with a recommendation to convert that area to the operation phase.
Are you satisfied?
So just as a general summarical question, the condition of all of those things that we're gonna accept and suddenly ask all the residents to pay for hereafter are in a level that we find acceptable?
We will ensure before the recommendation comes before this board that all of the permit requirements have been met.
It seemed like a dodge. Okay?
Are there current
I-
issues?
Yeah.
Do you need me to repeat? I think you know exactly what I'm talking about.
If you can be more
See that the
specific, I'd be
residents-
happy to answer your question, sir.
I don't see that the residents should bite the bullet over something that we have kind of been more than generous to that particular organization in the past. And now for us to take on something that might be not of the quality that we're used to, that we suddenly add on to the $6 million for that, unless you, in your professional skills and abilities, say, no. I, the Tyler of Wainwright, say that yes, it is, sir. And you should feel comfortable, and I'll go, okay.
Are you talking about lake banks? You want to make sure all lake banks are in good shape?
Yeah, I do. I think it's a rather expensive little topic.
I mean, there's, I'm sure, like every other lake in Gateway, there are areas on those lakes that require some attention. I haven't walked every single one of them, but I'm sure there are.
wouldn't it be prudent for someone to do that?
Yes, sir, and we will do that. Now, I think this board needs to make a decision at some point in time on what the condition of converting those permits, the operation phase, is going to be. If there's a washout on the lake, are you gonna make them fix that washout?
I would.
Why not?
Yeah.
I
Okay.
sure would.
That's fine.
I'm sorry, is there anybody in here that says, no, Gary, you're crazy, you're,
If they can pay for it themselves.
exactly.
Then that's understood. We will relay that to all parties involved, make sure it happens.
I didn't think I'd have to draw you out that hard. Okay,
Just trying to clarify your request, sir.
okay.
Are you satisfied?
And the
Yeah.
wetlands, are they clear of invasive?
The wetlands actually just completed their 5th or 6th year of monitoring. Elle has been out there on a regular basis with South Florida, and Boylan's doing their monitoring. And both parties, being Gateway and the Water Management District, have both agreed that they are in good shape and ready to be turned over.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so we look forward to your report. That'll be on the 3rd, right?
No, sir. I mean, no, that's a task to walk those lakes. I mean, it's not something that's going to happen in the next 3 days to get it on the next agenda.
All right. Anything else for Tyler?
Yeah, just one thing. Do you have an update? Where are we at with the new storage facility?
Oh, yeah, storage facility. We had an informal meeting with the zoning staff there today, and we have some kinks to work out, so I'm meeting with the zoning director again tomorrow morning at 10:30. And we think we have it squared away that that use as a storage facility will be approved.
Okay.
But we need confirmation from the zoning director, and hopefully we will get that tomorrow.
Okay.
You want to mention that the SRF package came in and we anticipate having it before the board or not?
Yeah, loan application package for SRF. We've sent that out to everybody involved. There's some things that need to be filled out, and eventually there'll be a resolution before the board to commence with that loan. So we're working on the paperwork for all that. That'll probably be next meeting when you guys see that.
We'll shoot for that, yeah.
Thank you, Tyler.
Thank you.
Operations managers report. April?
April White, your operations manager. One of the things that I wanted to update you on that is not included on the operations manager report, because I received it via a phone call, is Chief Lombardo from South Trail called inquiring about our comments and our interest on what we thought about a fire station being there on the corner of Gateway Boulevard and Fairway Lakes. So they'd be right there on the corner. And he was interested in who's responsible for zoning and whatnot, and I indicated that we wasn't responsible for any of the zoning, but he wanted to reach out to us anyway and be a good neighbor and see if the supervisors had any thoughts or comments. Part of our discussion was, I think they've had, right now they haven't made any purchases or anything, and this is still several years out. And I believe Chief Wolf is here if we had any specific questions of South Trail.
What was that location again? Gateway
It's
Boulevard
it's
and-
right there on Gateway Boulevard and Fairway Lakes, so it's right there at that busy intersection that is becoming very dangerous. Apparently, Chief Lombardo has had some soft discussions with Lee County, and there has been, and perhaps you are already aware, some conversations about the potential of a roundabout there. The fire department isn't a proponent of a roundabout. They would like a different option. I would imagine logistically it doesn't work very well for their big rigs and whatnot. But anyway, I just wanted to get your comments, if there were any, if there was any opposition or anything that you wanted me to relay back to Chief Lombardo.
Why aren't we talking to that?
Well,
gentleman
that
with the-
Chief Wolf, I had told Chief Lombardo that I was going to present the information to the supervisors tonight, and so I believe he probably just sent over Chief Wolf in case there was any specific
Well,
questions.
Why don't we bring him up?
Yeah, would you like to come to the podium
Yeah.
and
If you guys have any questions, I'll gladly answer them or explain.
See?
Just Wolf.
What a guy. Come on up.
So is this because there's existing
Sorry, I thought you
station
said yeah.
Thanks.
over by the school? Is
Right.
it, you've outgrown that? What's the justification for looking for a new location?
On the record, Chris Wolf, South Trail Fire. The main reason for our relocation or move or addition to our services is our response time to the Stony Brook area, that far northeast corner of Gateway, are horrendous, upwards of 8 to 10 minutes depending on traffic. We were given the land by McGarvey at the time we needed the donation to, back in the, long before my time, late 90s, early 2000s, I guess we made a promise to the Gateway that we bring paramedics out here. McGarvey offered land, hence that's why we were stationed where it's at. Back tucked away is, it's a horrible location for us.
Yeah.
So that's kind of why I did a risk analysis, and we're looking at a relocation or addition in Gateway, and then possibly adding a station on Tree Line and Daniels. That's our future plan. Our timeline for out here is probably 3 to 5 years, depending on build out or other financial things. But as everyone in the room probably understands, the vacant land in this area is going rather quickly, and especially premier access that we are looking for in this next move.
And the existing location, is that a single or double bay? How many?
It's a 2-bay station.
Okay.
Our thought would be probably a 3-bay station. We have had very informal conversations with Lee County Public Safety. They do have interest in putting ambulance, doing a shared station. We also do have anticipation, I don't know if Chief Lombardo has talked to the sheriff or not, about offering some office space to y'all's contracted detail deputy. My recommendation to our board was we purchased the whole 4.8 acres, wherever the original track was, of 1, 2, and 3. I believe you mentioned it in some letters. I never heard them referenced as letters.
Oh, it's for the streetlights.
Oh, okay. Yeah, as far as I've seen, there's 4 original lots, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and I think 1, 3, and 4 were still available. We missed out on the daycare coming in, and our board was not in a position to increase our level of spending to that level.
Okay. All right.
So you feel that that location is better than the corner on the opposite side of the road, which would then have you, or am I looking at the wrong one?
No, I think you're right.
The corner we're under contract on is the northeast corner of that parcel, or the southwest corner of that intersection. Right where that transformer is. So if you look directly across from 7-Eleven to the west, that's the track we're under contract on.
To the, okay, everybody calls it, okay, to the west, why not the one to the east, the one that then runs adjacent to the bank? And if
Well,
you're
it's-
concerned about Stony Brook and Hampton
Well, it's
Park-
drastically larger, and it's definitely out of our price range.
Oh, okay.
I believe that's an 11 or 12 acre site, if I recall.
And they won't split it?
No.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
But I mean, our station, just whether it's 1 or 2 station, or stories, it's still, that verdict's still out. The height requirement falls under Lee County zoning. And our understanding from talking to zoning and my chief talking to April is you guys have kind of aligned yourselves with what the future land use and current land use plans are of the county. As opposed to someone brought the question about the traffic light versus roundabout. We are 100% more pro a traffic light for one, it wouldn't intrude on our property, how that radius would work. Access would be drastically increased for us to get it out. I believe that Gateway Boulevard's in the process of being turned over to the county for maintenance. Is that
Yeah.
Yes.
True.
correct?
True.
So I would assume those conversations would refer to Lee County DOT at that point. But if there's any argument, we would appreciate your support of a traffic light. The county DOT we did have an informal with them roughly 2 months ago, 6 weeks ago. And they are gonna informally grant us a right in off of Gateway, just south of Gateway Boulevard, Fairway Lakes, just for apparatus only, so we could come in. Our egress from our station would be onto Fairway Lakes, coming directly out, hopefully into a traffic light one day. And then coming in, we would pass Fairway Lakes and come back in around from the south.
Chief, it used to be true that some homeowners insurance policies would have a lower rate if you had fire availability at a closer proximity. Do you know whether that's still?
Yeah, yes, it does affect your ISO rating in totality of our district. Right now, we're a 3 or a 3X, which means you don't have any hydrant system, and that's obviously not your case out here in Gateway. But yes, as our services increase or we do more analytics and try to catch up with the technology times, we just have some effect on your ISO rating. We are 1's the best, 10's the worst, and we're at a 3, so we're obviously in the top third currently. And that, not to bore you with ISO ratings, but whether it's fire prevention training, there's a lot of aspects, not just response that goes into that rating. I do foresee us one day being a 2, now that we're getting some other staff positions filled after the recession.
It's probably off of the-
Hopefully will lead us to a better ISO rating for everybody.
Any further questions for the chief?
How does the hydrant system work as far as the lines and the supply and the maintenance and God, they're 25 years old by now and.
Well, you guys maintain your water system. Our guys, our staff operations, fire guys come out annually and flow water, graphite your threads, paint as necessary. But as far as the hydrant itself or plumbing, they're owned by Gateway Services.
Okay.
It's your water system.
Okay.
Anything further for the chief?
As a
Thank you.
resident of Stony Brook, it sounds great to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've, myself and Chief Lombardi went up to the National Fire Academy in early May and took a class on standard coverage, which basically shows you how to future planning. Not just, I mean, years ago, you used to get a map of your area and do concentric circles of what ISO recommends, a 5-mile drive distance, and where they touch, you need a station. Now we've actually gone as far as modeling actual vehicle travel time from the prior year to determine that this is probably our best spot. I mean, it still puts us about 6 minutes to the far south end of Stony Brook, but it's still greater than 9 to 10.
I've got a question. Are you guys gonna pay for your own electricity?
No, we do, we said, April said you guys were.
How about your lights? If you have lights up there, will you pay for your lights?
Is that really a bone of contention of the little development?
You'd be surprised.
Lights on that
Yeah, we'll pay for our light. We'll gladly put it on our meter.
Good
Thank you,
idea.
thank you very much.
All right, keep it on.
Thank you, Chief.
It's probably pretty, we're gonna get a letter from all that.
Unfortunately, they won't be here for 3 to 5 years, so.
Yeah, it is, it's right.
We'll make it retroactive.
But we're planning ahead for one.
Prospective.
Okay, I believe we were doing my management reports. I also wanted to make a note, it wasn't on here, that it has been communicated to staff. We regrouped on the political signage right now. I was made aware that a couple years ago, there was an issue with some of the political signs. You know, for Lee County Code Enforcement does give them instructions on where they can place their signs, but staff has instructions not to remove any political signs until the election is over. All right, was there any specific questions on the
Your report?
today's operations manager report? I know from October 6th, when I was absent, there were some things that I have follow-up on.
Yeah. Okay, on page number 57.
Are we on the current report? I apologize, I don't
Yes.
use the agenda book.
Yeah.
Okay.
Steve, then, could you put up 57, please, sir?
Done.
Thank you, your lordship. Item number 2, staff is drafting a policy for littoral removal in developments where the DRI is silent. It's scheduled to be presented in November. Why? Why are we removing, we're getting back into this littorals thing? Who's the resource or source of the fact of ripping out littorals which affect the quality of the water?
So there have been residents calling in, and we do have in our pond standards a paragraph about where the DRIs are silent on whether or not there should be littoral planting. So it is ambiguous on what the meaning that our pond standards are fairly ambiguous about what the district is going to do on those ponds where the DRI is silent.
The costs aren't ambiguous, and the fact that we're continuously having to spend oodles and oodles and oodles of money to maintain the quality of these ponds, and it seems that they're the same people that call and complain regarding the growths and the algae, et cetera, et cetera. We've heard this on and on and on for, in my case, for 8 years. The Ponds Group at Pelican Reserve has done extensive studies, also had the gentleman in from Florida Gulf Coast University. Those littorals are a valuable asset. And for us to be ripping them out, then I would suggest that anybody that wants to do that, they should also take on the DRI responsibility of, if we need to specially assess them, that they pay for it.
Okay, so part of what the document is that we would bring before you, so basically, we are looking to start establishing some policies here, so staff knows exactly what the board's intent is of the document that they've adopted, which is the pond standards. So this is one area that needs clarification. So our intent is to draft a document, which would be a policy that's going to explain and reference our pond standards, and you're going to have an opportunity to review that document and adopt it to see if that is in fact the actions that you want staff to follow on a routine and consistent basis.
The action part sounds great. The date certain is never inserted.
This is the one where I indicated to you via email that we actually have a draft going, and I hope to bring it by, probably realistically with everything going on right now, is probably going to be the second November meeting.
Okay, so until that's done, you can table the fact of ripping out the littorals. Wouldn't that be a good idea?
The way that I understand it is there has been a previous incident where staff went in and sprayed a bunch of littorals. And at that particular incident, regarding that specific situation, staff understands the direction to be that they are not to go in and spray any more littorals. So
Okay.
based on that, when a resident calls in and wants to refer to our pond standards and says, there is no standards regarding where the DRI is silent, I want you to come in and spray these littorals, we need a document that we can hang our hat on so we know exactly what to do and what to tell that resident. And that's what will be brought before you in November.
Okay, so until then, you're not spraying.
That is correct, sir.
Good.
That's not totally true.
What's that?
That's not totally true. We are spraying them to the confines of the limitations in the pond standards, which is 4 to 8 feet.
Correct.
So 15, 20 feet, but total eradication, no. That was the one that we had a lot of conversation on when we did the ponds, and the way, I recall you left it, and April wasn't here at that time, is that if any group and/or any community felt like they wanted to push that DRI issue, which was the elimination or the eradication, they had to make the approach to this board first.
Okay.
That was the way we had left it.
Good. So now that that's clear.
And part of that policy is exactly what that approach is.
Yeah,
Good.
good.
But when you provide us with your new suggested policy, see if you can find the work that we did on it, I'm gonna say, darn near 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Now. Yeah,
I remember that.
Oh, we had a real hair-pulling contest.
It was November, December.
Getting everybody
Yeah, it's about a year ago.
About a year ago, November,
Yeah.
December.
And was that something brought before the board? What is
Oh,
it
yeah.
specifically
Also,
that you're
yeah.
wanting me to reference?
And I think
Okay.
Mr. Tinkle was a part of that meeting. Yep. And we also called on Mr. Kepper, et cetera. Okay? All right, same page. Item number 2, Fun Park Initiative. About electrical service, et cetera, and so the fun park. Where are we at with electrical service? Where are we at with the cameras? Where are we at with any of that?
So basically what we are attempting to put together is a package deal on how we get from point A to point B, where we're going to have, we need the electrical service provided, we need installation of the poles, we have the equipment provider, which is Metro Apollo. And it'll be a proposal with the cameras, the poles, the electrical service, the installation, and also we want to actually drill down on some sort of security company, some sort of, we're gonna get the data from this technology. What are we gonna do with it? We don't have anybody here that's going to monitor an email sent from the camera at midnight in the park that says there's somebody in the park. So we're trying to put together a complete package. This week I was able to re-engage with the equipment provider, and that was my fault. I didn't understand that he was waiting on me to provide him the electrical installation proposal. So we have that going again, and I think realistically we should be able to put a package together for you, hopefully by the end of November. I would hope by that second November meeting.
Okay, and the last sentence of that same paragraph, number 2. Management and legal will evaluate the tow policy as it relates to district-wide issues. So what's our tow policy?
Well, that's what we've been working on. We haven't brought one back to the board yet.
Right.
We don't have one today.
What's the flavor? You know, because we get emails from folks that live over by the fun park, and then a family name is used as they are leaving 2 vehicles parked there overnight, and even the name is given, which anybody could request on public type stuff.
Name is given where?
It's been given in emails that have been sent out and that have been forwarded on to the board, et cetera, from those parties that live over there.
Oh, okay.
Having said that, are we just gonna keep them sending us emails notifying us of the things that are happening and we don't seem to do anything? This is part of my dilemma with politics. Everything is good intent, but it never seems to get done.
Well, in the issue that, at least from what I understand, the complaint has been really one vehicle over the past 2 months. I mean, that's.
Actually, it's 2, apparently, but they keep.
But they're
naming
tied to the same
person
household,
for
right?
2, yeah.
And it's a resident. So, I mean, this is tough because a towing policy should be there for a reason.
Well, is the reason enough the fact that they're not supposed to be parking there after dark?
Well, I think what we need to determine is our position that a parking lot adjacent to a park is not overflow parking, that it is for single use of the park and should be vacated at dawn. If that's what our stance is, we've looked at it from all angles, then we need to create a policy that supports that.
So when do we do that?
Well, but here's another side to it. So if there is individuals that are parking in that parking lot because it's close, because their HOA has a policy of no parking on the street, those cars go from the park to parking on the street, and then it becomes an HOA issue, which is not our problem. But we just have to think through this because our action could impose, an alternative or a negative impact to the HOA, and we may have to deal with something else.
Okay,
So
I
we just need to think
understand-
through it.
I understand
Yeah.
all that. We've had 6 months of this. 6 months of the same parties reporting to the board, 6 months of them getting pretty loud in their emails of the fact we're doing nothing. And it's about time. 6 months, I think, is enough time for somebody to have thought through that issue and for the board to come up with a policy to give to April, to give to Tony, and then to let them follow through
Yeah.
with whatever our position is.
I think what's challenging is, right now, the issue is, it's a single instance. I mean, we don't have random people parking there overnight that are coming from outside the community or inside the community. So, I mean, I think you're right, we should have a policy. At least we can have the discussion and a debate on whether, whatever your stance is versus my stance.
Sure.
But we probably just need to,
So
put something in front of the board.
November 3rd should be a good idea, right?
Well, probably.
I don't think that we'll have together
Yeah,
a
I
tow
think-
policy.
Well, I'm not asking you for
Oh,
a
I'm sorry.
policy, I'm asking us for the fact that we have had 6 months to come up with an idea of what we think we're gonna try to give you a direction of. If we keep delaying this because you haven't got the policy, but we haven't even told you what our thoughts are, what's the point? The point is that we have to make the decision.
Yeah, we're the
and we
policy
have to
makers.
direct you with that.
Yeah. And the things we have to think about too is the policy that we put in play is not, unless we identify that policy just for the fun park or just for our parks in general. Or is it a policy that is, gateway-wide, which means if there's someone parked in a no parking
Sure.
anywhere in Gateway that we would have to enforce towing, we don't let anyone slide because then we'd be in derelict of our policy.
Because
So
this also
it's bigger,
segues-
it's a bigger issue.
It segues into this thing that you put, or whoever put in regarding the damage that's being done by the soccer fields. And that it indicates.
What page, please?
This is in this thing, Bill.
Yeah, yeah, just give me.
Yeah.
It's like
Well,
the
that's not a
third
no
page.
parking area, though.
No, but,
Yeah.
but we still, the implication is the fact that staff will input a request to repair the ruts, yada, yada, yada. Signage is violated routinely. We have got to give them the direction rather than putting them out and to find that, well, they don't have our support.
Yep. I agree.
So it's about time that we make some decisions here. And these are two somewhat related items,
Yeah.
is what I'm saying. I'm
Yeah.
not saying
No,
they're
I agree.
exactly the same.
I agree.
Okay? So what I'm saying is, it's about time. And it'll never get done, and there's no reason writing up policies if you don't know what we feel.
Right.
April, has anyone contacted, obviously, the individual homeowner is well-known as to who's using that parking space. Have they been contacted and requested not to park there?
Yes, we mailed a letter on August 30th, and I heard no response back.
Okay, so August 30th, and it's now October, about to be November. If that first letter doesn't work, does that mean we just don't continue on it, or we just kind of?
I think the bigger issue in some of this is us realizing that these tow-away signs is not the only signs that we've had up that we have been unable to enforce. We've had other signs up that we don't enforce. So we've had the signs up for years, and it's basically been, they were put up expecting people to do the honor system and obey the sign, and us never having to actually enforce them. You get into a situation where we have to address the priorities of the scope of services that we offer. When we get into a towing policy, like Mr. Banks said, we have to enforce it, and we have to enforce it unilaterally. We have signage out in one of the communities that we've been dealing with. We've got signage downtown in the commerce area, which is one of the reasons why on the street where Lee County is taking over, they told us to move those signs because they don't want it on their road because they're not going to enforce it. So that's something that we have to deal with. If you have to roll this out that, okay, if I had a tow policy and I'm going to get into the business of towing, what is the operational cost? How is that going to be enforced? Because when are we going to enforce it, and who's going to be there? It's like my comment in the inspection report is putting up no parking signs along the soccer complex is not the solution. Because if you went out there with a tow truck, you better have 30 tow trucks because there's going to be 30 cars parked out there. This place is packed. You know, this soccer complex is being utilized. And so if we can't tow them all, then how can we tow one? And that's our dilemma of, we not only want to bring to you a recommendation for a policy, but we want to bring to you a recommendation of how we're going to enforce the policy. That's the whole issue of why we're here, is trying to actually enforce this. And is this something, are we going to burden the entire district with this issue of towing over what I see as
One
two
vehicle.
vehicles in one parking lot? And that I'm not not sure that the issue is really the car being there, or if the drivers of the vehicle are making noise when they're coming in the night, getting in and out of the car. So it's a very isolated situation, and we're trying to force this policy that is going to, or should anyway, affect our community as a whole. And I'm not sure if we have enough there. It's unfortunate, I think, that there is a parking lot there that we are responsible for, and there's a couple of vehicles that are there at night. But we seem to, there's a consistent reoccurrence of one or two vehicles, and it's really an isolated community issue. And I don't have a resolution for you. All I know is it's not a simple fix. Tony's been working on the tow policy. They've been working with, is it Stony Brook that has the signage?
Well, we had some brief discussions with Stony Brook, and I guess I have a little bit of a different take than April does, because again, from a standpoint of towing, the district does not do the towing. It's a vendor that the district would have a contract with that does the zoning, the towing, and the cost.
They have to be
of-
alerted. I mean, someone has to alert them.
That's correct, but I'm just saying that the towing is not performed by the district. Then
That's a distinction without a difference if your car's been towed.
No, I understand, but from an expense standpoint, from a staffing perspective, we don't.
But
do
isn't there
that
like 3
activity.
notices or 2 or 3 notices that have to be done?
No,
Oh, I thought there was a notification process.
no, the signage is sufficient under the statute.
Okay. So we would just have we would just have a vehicle towed with no warning.
That's correct, if you have the right language on the right signage, the right location, yes.
The irony of all of this is, we haven't said what we've decided is the policy. Therefore, all of this is hypothesis. I mean, if it turns out to be that 3 out of the 5 of the people go, forget this towing, we're not gonna do it, then you
I'm
just
not in
went.
favor of towing.
Well, Bill's already told us. So having said that, if that works out that way, then that chap is just going to know that, and he'll park there, and somebody will say, well, that's the way it goes. Maybe then again, we could put up parking meters or something, I don't know. But somebody's gotta come up with a decision on this thing, or all of this stuff just keeps going on and on and on. The decision for the policy is here. It's not there, it's here.
Well, and part of that problem is we don't get together as a board to have working sessions where we draft policy, review, revise policy, and that's something that we should be looking at in the future. Because we can't, it would take us an hour to hash out a tow policy here today.
Hey, we got an hour.
Maybe more, maybe more.
Yeah.
You know?
So, and
But
and
that
normally what
does-
we do is we let staff come up with something and then we pick it apart.
Yeah, and then and we rip it apart, so then that just gets this feeling of, we did all this work on this, and you guys just shred it. Instead of, it should start here, and if it's gonna take an hour, then get it over with and done. Or else just say to yourself, we don't do policy, and it'll just be in perpetuity.
But don't you think that the professional managers who
No.
have the time
No.
and to do the background on this work, then bring us a policy that makes sense to them? We don't have to,
Well-
we don't have to accept it without modification, but they've done the background work that makes some sense.
I think, not to interrupt you, Bill, but I think in this case, we just don't have the time at this particular point.
Well, we have the time to say yes or no.
No, that's what I'm saying. What I think in this case, and maybe this is something that we need to discuss moving forward on how we are going to allocate time to do this, but let's have April come back with maybe let's have 2 options, a towing policy and then, an alternate, whether it's to not have one, and what the implications and kind of the justification behind each, because you've already started on the work, so I don't want to derail you in that point, but let's try to get it back, at the latest, the second meeting in November, even if it's just a draft for us to look at.
And part of that is we do the pros and cons, because as April's articulated, certain management cons that go along with the pros.
Yeah.
So I assume, we can work well together on having that sort of the pros and cons, cost benefit.
Yeah.
I shouldn't mention this, but 6, 7 months ago, this whole conversation started because some kids were playing basketball late at night. And now we have a police detail, sheriff's detail, if you will. And we're talking about lights, and we're talking about cameras, and we're talking about folks to watch the cameras. And it seems to me that we are blowing this way out of perspective.
Well, I think what's really going to come to it is when April comes back with the lighting and camera calls and everything else.
You're
What was a
gonna
great
say,
idea a couple
"Whoa."
months ago, we're going to have some issues, and that's probably something too, is an option 1 and
All right.
option 2.
Then my
Because
com-
have we heard any additional complaints from, anything major over the last 3 months
No,
that wasn't handled within the
other than they
controls?
have inquired as far as the status, and I have made a commitment to the HOA and the residents that I have been working on something to bring back to the board, because that was the direction by the board on July 7th, I believe it was.
Okay,
Yeah.
so then this means that April and the rest of the staff, whoever all of those folk are spending all of their time, when there's a gazillion other issues, to draft this policy and not know what our thoughts, feelings are. Now, Bill just expressed a thought and feeling, which I kind of concur with. And if you turn around and say to April, by the way, spend as much time as you want, but you can spend $5.15, don't come back with anything else. That's short and sweet, and it gets her doing something that's more productive.
So are you saying your position would be to not have a towing policy? And we take those signs down and that is open? Because I don't know if I'm against that.
With one thing, I'm not against it, I'm for that, but what I am for though is, back to my old thing about communication. If I didn't get a response from somebody after I sent a letter to them in August, and I had all this other stuff going on with other folk that are complaining, I sure as heck would have either A, picked up the phone, or B, though it never seems to ever want to be done, I'd send a certified letter indicating that if you violate this again, we will tow you.
But we
In
can't.
that case,
But we can't tow them because we don't have a policy.
hold on. I would keep the towing policy for 3 days, and I'd make sure he got the certified letter on the first day, and on the third day, if I didn't get a response, they'd be gone. Having said that, that's just the bitter end. The thing is, we're spending oodles of time on this issue, and that's what I wanted to bring this around to.
Yeah.
And it's pointless, and it's wasting her time, and it's wasting staff time, and we're spending thousands of dollars again on a sheriff's detail, and et cetera, et cetera. How far is this gonna go? Okay, on to maintenance.
Yes, sir.
Roads, maintenance, putting up a gate. Earlier on in the part of this book, and I guess you probably read the book from cover to cover like we do, there's a talk about somebody out there in that easement doing donuts and all this other stuff. What is our liability if we don't restrict the access for people that want to be out there driving?
But that's closed. We have got a gate up. We've got
Is it?
a rope up now, right?
You
A
weren't
cable?
here last time, they didn't.
Oh, I thought
It was
you
open.
said earlier.
We have put up the cable, we've reinstalled the cable that was on Gateway Boulevard at the, is that the
So
north
there's
end?
no way that that donut person can get in there again, is that true?
I would not
Can they
commit
ride
myself to
around
that.
it? No, can they ride around it?
I'm sure, they're on dirt bikes, motorcycles, and the dilemma here with the easement is, I don't think we own the easement.
That's
It's-
correct.
So I can't imagine we have any.
Well, someone will always try to assert we have liability because we operate as a drainage easement.
Right.
But the district is not the owner of that.
Right. And so we did reinstall the cable. The issue here is when I left work the other night, there was 2 very small children on motorcycles, a little scooter and a little itty bitty dirt bike. And I am very suspicious that that was probably residents out there on their motorized vehicles, having fun on the easement. And so I have this is, again, it's very difficult for us to distinguish who we're clamping down on, residents or outside people. We reinstalled the cable because we want to try to keep those unauthorized vehicles out. But it also, we have to have access for authorized vehicles. We are traveling across the easement. FP&O is certainly out there installing poles right now. We have contractors that are traveling across the easement. So when residents that may live across the easement or are traveling in the neighborhood and they see these vehicles out there on the easement, I guess it looks like a place to ride your four-wheeler or your dirt bike. Or your golf cart. I don't know. Are we going to clamp down? Can we put signage out? That's a question that I have, but we're talking about FP&L, us, and WCI as far
And
as.
the sheriff.
And the sheriff, as far as trying to enforce this. So we're right back to this shared area that we don't really have any enforcement power on.
If
And
we don't own it, and we don't, you just said, have enforcement power, then do we have a liability, Tony? If we don't, whatever.
We have somebody engaging in activity on a property for which we have an easement. I'm not sure what liability would occur if someone was to flip a bike or land in a lake. We don't have necessarily an unsafe condition. We have a water management system that conforms to the regulatory scheme.
How about 2 vehicles
They would
hitting
try,
one another?
they would try to assert we have liability. But to have liability, you have to have a duty. And our duty, I can't imagine what our duty is right now to people that don't belong on the property that are trespassers.
Okay, so if we
Operating
put up-
vehicles, so
if we put
I'm
up-
struggling with, being a duty, I'm struggling with there being a liability.
If we put up the appropriate signage, then can we remove this from any more part of this thing and wasting more time of it in our book?
Again, we're to signage that I don't know if we can enforce.
But I think
What would
part-
the
I-
sign say?
What does the sign say? No
But I
trespassing?
think part of the gating and the cable.
We're talking about the service road?
Yeah.
I think part of the gating and the cable is to help protect the district's assets, which is the water management system. You know, it's part of it, keep people out and away from our water management system. It's the primary purpose, I would say.
Is there any applicable signage that we should put up?
We'll check, I'll work with Dave on that.
That'd be cool. Then we wouldn't have to worry about this. Okay? So last but not least is, there are several articles in here about things that were left unlocked, like a second time, or like this well that was left unlocked and there's electrical power to it, et cetera. And I've asked this question before, and also the condition of the fun park and that type of thing. Is there a staff member or members that actually own this, that you would go back to them and go, look, I've given you the responsibility for this particular area, this is yours, and you own it, and I don't expect this condition to happen again?
Yes, we are doing just that.
Cool, it's about time. Good. Are you finished? Oh, yeah. Yeah, oh, great.
April, do you have more for us?
I do. Would you like me to answer the questions that were remaining from 10-6?
All right.
Real quick, we did address the alligator signage, and we are recommending that we put signage up. It's a sign that the South Florida Water Management District uses. And instead of, I know we've had this conversation before when we discussed the alligator signage, that I don't believe we are interested in sign pollution in our community, and we wasn't interested in putting a lot of signs out there in the maintenance easements of all of the ponds and have to maintain them. So what we're recommending is that we put signs on the roadways at the 4 main entries of the community. So not the individual, not in front of the individual communities, but in 4 prominent locations of the gateway community. To it was recommended by legal that we put some sort of signage up, and that would be. I think that would be meeting that. It's not a requirement. We're not required to put the signage up, but I think it would be meeting our our ethical
Trying to
obligation to
minimize
notify.
liability.
Yeah, minimize the risk and notify the residents and visitors. You feel comfortable with that? 4 signs?
So we're gonna have some signs on some ponds, is that what I'm hearing?
Now, the ponds that we have, the signage on is just in our recreation areas, just at the sports complex, just over at the pool. So that's the signs that are actually on the ponds. Those are already there. So we are just talking about putting 4 signs up in the medians along the roadways to notify the drivers when they're coming into the community that our storm system, supports, alligators, and please take caution. Just 4 signs. So we'd be posting to the community, but not a lot of sign pollution. It's not a requirement. We don't have to put the alligator signs up.
Is the whole purpose for this, Tony, is there,
Trying to minimize liability.
yeah, okay, so
And
minimize
I think-
liability,
I don't have
the
my
4
memorandum.
signs are the best thing for us to do.
Yes,
Yeah, I mean-
in fact, if we're aware of a dangerous situation on property, you either remedy it or warn people of it. So,
Okay.
for example, if we are aware of a pond or lake that is teeming with alligators that have no fear of humans, that have snatched their dog or 2 or come close to, then we have an obligation to either remove them or, contact the authorities to remove them or post that area and warn people of that hazard. That's the sort of the clearest cut example. Otherwise,
I think it's a nuisance if they're deemed a nuisance.
I think if 4 signs are what it takes to cover us from a liable perspective, whatever, let's
it's the
just
best, yeah.
get that done and keep moving.
You're gonna put them where the alligators cross the road, right?
Yeah. So,
Alligator crossing.
I think we're good. on
Yeah,
that.
I mean, for example, if any alligators have been reported in any ponds as being nuisance alligators, or if there's been an ongoing alligator removal program, that's a situation where you definitely want to post that pond, that lake.
Yeah.
But absent that, I think this is a good program.
Okay.
Okay, that's what we'll do then. Okay, there was a couple more things. The dog park. I do have an update on the dog park. We are inching towards, I think, a stronger solution for what's going on at the dog park. So the way that I understand it today, our ADT rep was here, we had a conversation. The dilemma with the dog park is the stadium lights being so close to it. So apparently they're taking a hit and it's traveling through the ground. So we have a proposal now that has a stronger surge protection. We initially had ordered some surge protection. We're backing off of that. Now we're going to a stronger surge protection with more points in the system. I believe it's 3 points in the system. And also, we're going to put some grounding rods because the electricity apparently is just traveling along the metal fence and going in and hitting the equipment.
So can I ask a question before you go any further? Are we still at a point where we need to have a key card to get into the dog park? I mean, I thought initially it was to cover the build or the expenses to build the dog park. Do we still feel like we need to charge people for access to the dog park?
If you
Yeah.
look here, the ongoing maintenance of the fencing, the holes that are dug, there
Okay.
is an ongoing
Okay.
maintenance.
And-
I'm just wondering, like,
That,
for that stuff I understand. I'm just thinking for this, if we're
Yeah,
having
but Mr.
ongoing
Tin-
electrical issues.
Yeah, Mr. Tinkle is echoing a good point, is that's how we're controlling the vaccinations of the attendants.
Okay, all right, that's fine. I just want to ask.
So I
you know,
think that does minimize our
if
risk
it's
a little
justified, I
bit.
got no problem with bringing revenue in. I just thought I'd pose the
I mean,
question.
technically, we could still do a card and not charge for it. So what you're saying, it could
No,
still,
I was
still
trying to
be met and
offset.
still do a
I was
card.
literally trying to offset the cost of the actual, mechanism of the key card. If we were having continued issues, was it really warranted? But well, you don't have to go any further. I just wanted to pose the question quickly.
Okay, so I think we have a better plan, and that's gonna come to fruition. Oh, and also, we realized, that the wrong type of locks have been on the gate. So we got that remedied today, I believe. Apparently, the type of lock that has always been on the gate is a failed secured lock.
So what?
A failed secured lock. So when the electricity fails,
It locks
is
instead of
secured.
open.
More of like a jail. So when we got the new equipment, we didn't redo the locks, the locking mechanism. The vendor didn't replace any of that. And then we had a problem with it, and our other vendor, the locksmith, came out and just replaced identical locks. So the issue there is we have to have a fail-safe lock, and that means it remains unlocked when the power is off. Then that way, the patrons will be able to close that front gate, exchange the dogs in and out of the park without dogs running in and out. And because that's the inconvenience right now, is that they can't get the dogs in with that little secure area. So hopefully we have that remedied
Okay.
today. Let's see, what else was there? We did the alligators. There was a question about the letters on the pond inspection report. The letters were supposed to have been sent out today. What we've been working on is drafting a couple of fairly comprehensive templates, like just, your pond was inspected on this date and the following violations or situations were noted. So we've been trying to streamline some processes so Elle doesn't have to spend so much administrative time customizing a letter each time, that we have some generic templates that she can come back from her pond inspection, indicate a list of addresses, and hand to Julie up front and say, hey, I need you to mail out these letters. So we can keep that line of communication going. So that's what's kind of taken us so long, this initial time. But we're getting that smoothed out, and this should went out today. Let's see.
One item,
I think
April,
that was
just to call out. So
Yes.
there's, you guys are researching a potential replacement for the lightning detectors at the fields.
Yes, we are.
One thing I would say in consideration of this, whatever that cost is, you should look at um, taking that and basically amortizing it back to the leagues over a 5 or 10 year period, whatever. So if we have to spend money on this, I think our lease agreement should cover the cost of that purchase.
So part of how we're looking at resolving that issue, so we can do just that, is so right now, our leagues are charged per our fee schedule. And so what we need to do is we need to craft each league agreement based on their particular usage and encumbrance on that amenity that's being offered. And so part of how Lee County does it is for their leagues, their bigger leagues that are using the complexes all the time, they actually have what they call sports development contracts. And those are individual contracts where you go to the table and you negotiate.
I mean, it's based on head count a lot of
what's
times.
going to be funded. And so we need to not only negotiate these individual costs to the leagues, but we need to change that structure of how we have them set up in the fee schedule. I know I've already had that discussion with one of the leagues, and they understand that.
Yeah, okay.
But that's something that we're moving towards, and that's going to be more of a long-term fix probably over the next year or so.
Yeah,
So what I'm
okay.
hoping for definitely is to get that fee schedule revised, figure out how to negotiate a contract with a sports league, and then by that next year renewal, we'll actually be negotiating some individual contracts.
Yes, okay.
Okay, so are we done with the operation manager updates? Are we ready to go on to the big item?
Not until you answer whether you
Oh.
found the starboard that you needed.
Oh, I'm sorry. We did, yes, sir. We found a vendor that has it. The starboard, and I apologize, I probably shouldn't use that word because I think that's an actual manufacturer name,
What
it's
are
a
we
brand name. But it is that resin material that we're looking for. And so I do think we have some momentum on that. Any other questions? Okay, website rebuild and development. What I'm asking today is for approval of the website rebuild and developing a new website. I know you guys are all familiar with, originally, I guess when I got here, we were entertaining VistaLogix, a proprietary software. And so what I'm offering, or what I'm asking for approval today is basically to maintain our current infrastructure, which is WordPress. WordPress is a very powerful code. It is very, very popular and commonly used. And I have no IT expertise whatsoever, so I have to really digest all of this information that is provided to me. This company was recommended, actually both of the companies that I provided in the analysis were recommended by our outsource vendor for who we use for IT services. And the difference was, the significant difference in the cost is how Stickboy, which is the one that I'm recommending, the significant cost is how they maintain the website on a monthly basis. And the other company, which was Priority, they do more of a custom retainer type of basis for our monthly maintenance and relationship with them, which really drove up the overall cost of that relationship. And what Stickboy is offering is they have streamlined the security maintenance to a T, and so they can offer it at a much lower cost of just the $125 a month. Now, part of this proposal is twofold. We would be first correcting our website, which is going in and fixing the areas that were corrupted when our security was breached. And then we would be redeveloping the website. And I know there was a request to see some of the websites. I have 5 very strong references. Everybody spoke very highly of them. Excuse me, most of them had used them for years. I think there was one that just went through a web development, and they're a 4-month patron of Stickboy. So I have the websites up for the 5 references that I can show you. And one of the things, a caveat that I just want to explain to you is that the look of someone else's website And just kind of to recap where we were going with Vistalogix, is the look and feel of the website, that's up to us. What they have in there this a model, and we're going to sit down with them, and we're going to tell them exactly what it is our website, what we want it to do, which we have a very simple website. It's document management, and it's basically information. So we don't have any customer login. All of our customer billing is just a link to another secured website. So I think our website, other than the document management, is very simple. And so that's why I was kind of remiss about the proprietary software with Vistalogix, which is a company of 2 people in Texas. This is a staff, I believe they have 12 or 13 staff members. And that was one of the questions that I asked all of references, is how responsive they were, because we are a very needy organization. What I am looking for is a company that can provide us a relationship. We need to learn how to utilize our website. I have heard probably at every board meeting that we need to communicate with our residents. One of the things that we need to do is learn how to do the digital marketing, how to use our website. We need customer service, customer satisfaction surveys. So I need a vendor that can give us a relationship that will continuously train us, teach us from going from an organization that never updates their website except adding a document every 2 weeks, to touching their website probably at least weekly, if not daily. Rotating out information, rotating out pictures, getting involved with the community. We need to figure out ways when we have an issue and there's something going on, how to communicate with the HOA presidents and the management companies. Do that through the website portal. So those are the types of things that we need to learn and we need to streamline. So I need that relationship, because we're going to have to be taught. We need some cross-training. We need to probably have at least 3 to 4 people trained on how to go in and update that information, so there's someone constantly on there evolving that website. So that's what I put the focus on, was the relationship and what we need to learn as an organization versus what it's going to look like, because what it's going to look like is exactly what we tell them we want it to look like. And WordPress is so well known. The one problem with it is you have to make sure that you keep your security up to date. And so that's something that in this relationship, in that $125 a month, they're going to be constantly updating, because everybody knows how to read the code. It's pretty much a fundamental of any IT geek or nerd, whatever you want to call them. We could probably get a high school student to revamp our website, because everybody knows that code in the industry, or a lot anyway. And so once we get past that, I think that using that code that everybody knows will be able to give us an ability that if we don't like our current vendor, we can move. We can get a better service, because we need to learn how to use that tool as an organization. So that's what I was putting emphasis on, not the Vistalogix proposal. It did not include that function module that he had. I talked to Brian Haas several times, and he was basically just going to take our exact website and put it in his proprietary software for that proposal amount. And the thing with proprietary software is you're stuck there.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. I mean, we don't want to do that.
That's their code. And so I wanted to stay on that open source platform, so we have the ability to move freely. And this particular vendor commits that they don't do a lot of customizing, and they just use the standard industry coding of WordPress. They don't go in. So what we found out about our existing website is whoever developed our website went in and put all of these customized coding in. So when it was hacked, he broke all of that customized coding. So even though we got the website back online, we updated it with the current version of WordPress, all of that custom coding is still broken, because we need somebody to go in and completely revamp it and take it back to standardized coding.
Yeah. Well, if, did you want to go first?
Go ahead.
if no one on the board minds, I've got some expertise in this area. So if they don't mind, I'll jump in with this and provide some oversight with April to make sure that we've got the right expandable infrastructure in place. Because really what you're talking about is you need to have a back end, which is your it's basically called just a CMS, a content management system, where you can go in and make your updates. So you're not so limited to your restrictions on your vendor. But so I'll jump in and make sure that we've got everything we need.
Yeah, the most important component is the I think it's SEO, is that the acronym?
Well, SEO is your search engine optimization.
Right,
This
that's
is
the search engine. That's how our users
CMS is what you're
search
calling
stuff.
your how you go in and make your updates.
Right.
I know
So-
we don't wanna go with anybody that's got proprietary software, because like you said, you're stuck, and if you leave them, you're never getting any information from them.
And we were looking at an organization that had 2 employees, 2 partners that covered 2 different dynamics of the organization. So basically, if something happened to one person, we have nothing.
Can you show us
Sure.
a website from, of the,
Yeah, Eisner's of Florida, actually the place that I go to, is one that's on their list, and it looked good. I mean, I led a project to redesign T.I. Gross website, so this is a good one, and the Eisner's of Florida is also another good one on that your list.
What is it?
Eisner's of Florida, the one that's. the one-
Centers of Florida wasn't one of my references.
Yeah, no, it was in your list though.
I don't remember my Centers of Florida.
Yeah.
So do you want to move around this website?
yeah, just for a minute or two.
And again, this is front end. You can change pictures around. You can have banners. There's a lot of, the front end is completely customized. I mean, completely configurable.
And there's a lot of things to consider on how you design your website. And I don't even understand all of them as far as, you want to just move around that website?
iCenters of Florida is in their list of.
Yeah.
Oh, is it?
Yeah,
Okay,
that's-
it wasn't one of my references.
But what we need is,
that I
we need
checked.
a good document repository, something that's easy for residents to go find,
Right.
research, an easy way on the front page to click here to view our meetings. I mean, it just
Right.
needs to be more
So-
user-friendly, where you can navigate through it and have the right information.
So from the time we built our website to what websites are now, the industry has kind of changed. Now they're almost very, they're almost kind of sterile, because they're so easy to see. You know, they just want you to see these big things, and it's kind of a drill down phasing.
It's less content-driven and
Right.
more
And
action-oriented.
And so one of the reasons why I've put less emphasis on what these websites look like is because depending on how you use your website and how you pick a website is depending on what you want to do with it. If you, like a lot of these are private companies that probably have ordering systems, they probably have customer logons, they might have a catalog of T-shirts or what have you. And then there's this extra layer of the type of software you need is depending on if you're going to have an app, depending on if you're going to use e-commerce, which I don't even know what that is, but it has something to do with a revenue model, I'm sure. So we have a very simplistic
Banners.
website as far as what we need it to do to function. And WordPress is very dynamic, and so as we want to add things to it, as we grow, there's ways to step up and there's ways to add things to it. So I don't think when we had the meeting with Stickboy, there's really nothing that we can't add to our website, you know, as some sort of little, like a little subsidiary software or something. Like if we wanted to add some sort of time tracking or some sort of work order system or something like that as part of our website, it would be another individual software that we could just pop on there. WordPress is very dynamic that way. So I don't think we're going to have any limitations for where we're going to go with this. Yes.
You seem to know more about what we're talking about.
I mean, it's-
Than the average bearer. Are you okay with this?
Yeah, I'm okay. I think still $11,000 is, I mean, it's a good price. It seems a little low, but if that's what they've quoted, that's good.
Will you make the motion to approve this?
Yep, I'll make a motion to approve.
I just have one question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, we have a motion, kind of a second, then we'll have the questions.
I'll second.
All
For
right.
discussion.
Please.
So $250 is a stated amount. That's the thing that jumps out at me about the training. Yet you reiterated the fact of the quantity of training, the number of people to be trained, the ongoing training. This seems like an unrealistic amount. For them to specify that they needed that, whereas the other two included it, and this wasn't the cheapest, yet $250 is a specified amount, and what does that get us?
Well-
What amount of training is that gonna get us?
So that's going to, we go over to their local office, and they're going to show us how to navigate our website and how to get things on it. Now, I would imagine that their generic fee for training is Diane has been using the background of WordPress for some time. So.
Yeah, she's been Googling and YouTubing how to do
Right.
certain things.
And
So do
that.
we know how many hours that is? So 250, is it
Yeah, I mean,
10 hours?
What's
Is
the
it?
amount of time?
Yeah.
I think it's just one session. It's probably only a couple of hours to show us how to navigate. Now, the reality is, and we talked to them about this, as far as the 125, they feel that the 125 a month they are completely comfortable that when we need them, we can call, and they're going to be there to walk us through something.
But that isn't training.
Well,
That's problem solutions.
here's what I would say. If we approve the amount and to move forward, I'll step in and help out with the negotiation. So we've got maintenance fees, how many hours of maintenance fees, what is the ongoing training per month, and all the ins and outs that I have and would negotiate with a website vendor like this.
So then you'll come back with the real amount.
Yeah, here's the amount that we've approved, and here's the contract and the terms and conditions, or the statement of work.
Can you do that by next meeting?
How far along are you with, so once we approve this,
Mhm.
do you think we could turn around a contract or a statement of work within the next 2 weeks? Are you ready to move
Now,
that
the
fast?
statement of work, are you talking about the development of the website?
Well, first you're gonna start with the contract, and the contract is gonna have, okay, for 11,500, because they've quoted you this amount, so they've gotta have, at least some type of idea of what we're asking for. You've already talked about requirements and things that we need.
I'm under the understanding that this proposal is
Yeah,
is
so
it.
that should be no problem, to go back and look and negotiate within the next 2
Why
weeks.
don't we just approve it contingent upon you confirming?
I'm sorry, I don't understand. What are we
Well,
confirming?
We're confirming the fact that 200, what, you haven't given me, if you're bringing it to me, giving it back to you this way, then you can't give me a statement of what that $250 gives you. There should be some indication. Plus, you also indicated very specifically, and I think that that's reasonable, that there's got to be 3-4 people that are going to be totally trained on this. What exactly does that do for us? And to be sure that we've got people adequately trained, even if there's staff turnover, and that it's specified in the contract.
Yeah, I mean, to me, even with that 1150 and it's been scoped out, but if we don't have someone, I mean, no offense, but if we don't have someone that has intricate knowledge of how websites work and what you run into, that number could increase if we're asking them to do an integration that is, wasn't thought of, or, I mean, it could balloon. And I'm not that worried about the 250. What I do think we need to specify how many training hours. Is that a first initial implementation meeting where staff gets trained, and then there's X amount of maintenance hours per month, or there's training available. So, I mean, I'm okay if we approve this amount for us to move forward, with the understanding that we'll come back with the statement of work and everything that when we're ready to execute it.
Well, the reason I'm talking about it too is if you notice, it indicates that they're taking monies from a different budget. Okay? So if you need, in fact, 15 instead of 11.5, why don't we specify 15
I mean, there has to be a little bit of a buffer there. I mean, in these projects, you're gonna have that.
Okay? So I'm saying that I think that since you've stated your expertise regarding it, that I'd like to see that you confirm and my next meeting is.
Yeah,
I'm
so
fine with this.
we're asking for approval to move forward to execute the contract, and we will.
And bring back clarification.
Bring back the final, contract at whatever point.
Now-
In 2 weeks.
Contingent upon your satisfaction.
Contingent upon, yes.
And also contingent upon some additional language in the limitation of liability indemnification section to comport with Florida law.
Yeah.
Dealing with local
I
government.
mean, when you talk about, all the, really the infosecurity is a huge piece. I mean, how, are they backing up? Do they have redundant systems? I mean, there's a lot to it.
Right, and just to clarify the proposal amount, and what we've asked them to do for us, is we are reestablishing our website. So we're not completely doing a redesign, because that wasn't what was in the VistaLogix proposal. So the way that I understand it is, what we're looking for is we want to take what we have now. So Stick Boy's been out to our website, so they know that, okay, they have all of this on the plate. We may put things in different spots, but they already know what we're administering on the website. So that's their confidence in their proposal, is that their confidence in and we clarified that at our sit-down meeting, is that we're not going to sit down at the table when it gets to this development phase where we start nailing down exactly how we
They're
want
gonna
it.
replicate our system.
That we're going to go off the reservations. That isn't included in this proposal. They're going to basically, it won't,
They're gonna pick up our site, they're gonna put it on their platform,
they're gonna.
and they're gonna replicate what we have.
No, it's gonna be on the same platform. It's staying on WordPress. They're
Well,
not,
but I mean,
this
I'm
is
sure
not
that they're-
proprietary software. It's our platform. They're fixing our platform.
So they're gonna take over the hosting and.
Mhm. Right. They're gonna fix everything, and they're going to make it look, I would say, current.
Well, let's not get caught up in that piece. I think what we need now is, what you're looking for is just approval for us to move forward. If 12.5 is the number, we'll start there. If we have to come back, we'll come back.
To be updated on the 3rd.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay?
All right, we have a motion and a second.
Aye.
All in favor, say
Aye.
aye. Opposed? 4-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have anything more for us at this time?
No.
Thank you very much. District manager?
Yes, I do have a couple of follow-up items, if allowed. Just it kind of, on the old website, we have gone in there and done some of the temporary repairs to get the agenda back up, meeting books back up, minutes back up. I gotta finish up getting the committee meetings back up. But at the very least, we'll have the documents we need until they were able to come in and kind of do the repair. So we have fixed up some of those pages to make it, at least for temporarily, have enough sufficient information for people to download.
Is it applicable for us to have our own venue to do our own backups, separate and distinct from the hosting company?
Well, I mean, typically if you're supporting files and documents on your website, they're gonna be backed up on the hosting company's server. And that should be backed up. There's redundancies in back. So if the site comes down or you get hacked, they basically should be able to flip the switch and basically have that site back up, because they've got not only redundant documents, but they've got whole redundant code that they could basically something like
They can.
reset it back
Up
to.
to 30 days.
Up to them.
They keep our website, they redo it for 30 days at a time. And so we can always go back to
Yeah.
day
I
one.
mean, we should have never had a hack in the first place.
Well, we've got our own server room, right? And it's supposedly secured, right?
Yeah, but you might not even need. I mean, what would happen in that situation is there would be redundant servers, so we would never lose data. Doesn't matter if it gets hacked. If one of their buildings blows up, they're going to have a redundant server in you know,
cloud.
backed up in Texas, in the cloud, it could be, you know, wherever. So we should never have to, you know, have to take up our server space for that documentation,
Well, what
unless we
else-
wanted to.
What else does our server then do?
I don't know what our server,
I mean, we've got this secured room back there. That's
it probably
supposedly-
powers our internal network system.
I don't know.
I don't know, I haven't looked at it, but, I
Might
mean, that's a
be-
whole other IT
Might be
conversation.
interesting to find out.
Yeah, we need to look at that.
Okay, two other items. One is, we're still working on the district rules, so I'll get with Tony and make sure there is a version that is up and running on the website. We just want to make sure that there's no updates, changes, and we'll continue to work on that. The other thing is, I have addressed the timeliness of the meeting minutes. I know we had September 1st in our package this time. Next meeting, we'll get ourselves caught up, and you'll have probably 2 or 3 to make sure that we are more timely with getting that up to the board as well as eventually to the website.
What's the requirement there? How far in advance does it have to be posted? Is it 5 days, 7 days?
In terms of the agenda, 7 days. You need to have
The agenda, 7 days, but the
Yeah,
meeting
I
book.
believe the meeting book, well, we put it up at the same time.
Okay.
Yeah, really, the meeting book is the key piece because it's got all of the support. Just the agenda doesn't do as much good.
Okay.
And that's all I had.
Thank you. Any other questions for the manager? How about the utility manager's report, Chris?
Good afternoon. I want to hand out a sheet because I was remiss, I did not send my information over to Steve, but there's not a whole lot of new stuff to add, and I'll touch on that.
You gonna tell us about the new growth?
That's temporary.
Thank you.
It's not for hunting season, I do my hunting at
Yes,
Publix. One of the positive things, on the 14th, DEP came out and did a 3-person inspection. They do it yearly and also on a triannual basis, go over your records, go out and inspect portions of your system, pull samples, check pH, check chlorine levels, and report came back today and we had no deficiencies on it, so it's always nice to get something like that. The TECO gas line, I'd like to say we're ready to get started. 2 weeks ago, they told me we'll start calling in locates Wednesday, and we actually went out there and started flagging and identifying lines, and by the end of the week, nothing happened. Monday, I sent them an email, what's going on, no response. Sent them another one this Monday. Yesterday, got a copy that the TECO person had sent out to the engineer and their contractor, when are we gonna get started on this? And as of this afternoon, no response from any of them. And I did attend a half-a-day seminar that they offered down on Alico at the Holiday Inn, had the gas companies there, safety regulations, new things like that, and the new area supervisor for TECO was there. And he was explaining to me what a big hurry they were to get gas into the brewery and how things were going. And I told him they were going badly. And that we had been waiting for weeks and weeks for them to start. I've got spare parts, I've got construction inspection ready to go. In the last 4 weeks, I've had to prod them and get nothing out of them. So I wish I had something to tell you on a start date, but.
He didn't buy you lunch?
No, and they did provide lunch there though, but I bother them twice a week.
Good for you.
So our telemetry's on schedule. It's moving just a little bit behind. We need to get some cards from Verizon, and the contractor also offers them, so that's just a pricing thing I'm doing to see which one of them's cheapest. Because our consultant BCI is actually a sub-vendor for Verizon and does that too, so he gave me the pricing, and our government Verizon rep will have that pricing to me tomorrow. Water meters, installation of the remaining ones, that's going about as well as TECO. There has not been anybody out the last 2 weeks, except for one day from US Water. Same thing, I'm bothering them, talking to the people above them, and the fellow says, oh, we're waiting for parts. Typically on this, I would really give them a hard time and let them go and look for another vendor. But at the pricing they offered on the installation of those large meters, I don't think you could get anyone to do it for close to that, because they're struggling, the amount of work they're having to do versus what they thought. And they came complaining about it, and I told the supervisor, you went out in the field with our folks, you inspected 40 of these yourself. Terry Hanlon told you you're gonna have to dig every one of those boxes up, and it's gonna take a lot of work, and so
Okay.
they're changing, but we'll keep bothering him, and he told me he's gonna get back on schedule tomorrow or Monday. And Pond 104, the water
Hey,
levels.
real quick, the meter test, where are we at with the meter test?
I have a dozen meters pulled to do bench testing on them to check them for accuracy, and the county had told me they were gonna do them, and when I called them Tuesday and said, okay, drop them off, they kinda hemmed and hawed and said the manager said he doesn't wanna do them. So, it's, there's a number of other vendors that do those, and half of those meters were irrigation reclaimed water, and he said they weren't gonna touch those anyway, because they would have to clean their system and decontaminate it, because it wasn't potable water. But I'll have 3 more prices by tomorrow. There's vendors and other companies that do that service, so.
Okay.
And I think they just didn't want to be bothered with it, and you know, I told them I was going to bring it over, and we aren't technically their customer like they would do it for customers. So.
We are their customer.
We are their customers.
Well,
We just-
we are, but usually when they're doing it, it's because one of their water customers that they bill complains about it and bring it in, and this is a
You know,
little.
they do bill us. They've even overbilled us,
Oh, yeah.
you know, a lot. Just a minor amount of a little over $1 million,
Right.
you know.
We are the only customer.
And Pond 104, water levels haven't receded, but we're moving ahead, and actually have had a second meeting with the property owners there to go over some of the issues and document those issues, and we're meeting tomorrow with the contractor to finalize everything, just exactly what vegetation's coming out. But I told them emphatically that we will not replace any vegetation that we removed from our easement. I said, however, where we've disturbed your yard or rutted it or there's sod, we'll take care of that, but vegetation, no. And they've been real amenable with the help, but we'll be out there tomorrow with the contractor and set the schedule. Our irrigation well evaluation is about finished with Lane. One item, we still have to do the evaluation on the well in the back by the soccer field. We couldn't get access because everything was so wet, but they'll be out there next week. And the motor on that well is bad. It's not functioning right now, so when they pull it to do the pump tests, we're gonna swap it out right then.
Is that the one that was left, that's in here in this report that was left unlocked? And there's still power to it? and
No, that's
yeah.
actually, and it's the installation right in the rear by the parking back there. And it's an old golf course well, and that well is not functional. It had, all that piping stays in
That's
place.
this guy, Chris.
Yes, sir.
I thought you were gonna ask if it was one of the refurbished.
No.
But that well hasn't been in use a lot of times, and typically you might pull all that yard piping out, but when you do that, the permit goes away with it. So if you ever wanted to re-drill a well or rehab it, you know, you leave it in the inventory. It has been cleaned up. We locked the cabinet. I thought the cabinet was dead, but it supplies power to one of the other wells. So,
Okay.
but it's all been cleaned up, pressure washed, garbage removed, and we're doing that with the other well sites, also making sure the vegetation's trimmed, and we're replacing some parts and doing some painting.
Yeah, we'll be there. How about David? Is he doing any more with as discovered or that type of stuff, mapping out?
I am going to be meeting with him Tuesday morning at his office to go over the status of all the POs that are out there right now and where the work is, and see it and bring it back with me. And I'll come back with a report. And I'm also continuing to work with the college. I spoke to the admin assistant, and she's setting up a meeting next week with 2 of the professors to look at intern versus a class project. And I'm trying to get
Fantastic.
I'm trying to get the students involved in front, not bring them in and say, I want to use you as a grunt labor force, but basically setting it down, and we have guidelines. We need an information retrieval system, scanning maps, inputting data into the GIS.
Great idea.
You know, being able to pull that out, and I think getting them involved in the design of it and then we can probably pull a few of them and use them as interns for inputting, or in the summer, hire a few of them to come over and knock it all out.
Yeah.
Can we get them at all involved also in the overseeing of the $6 million project?
I mean, it might be more along the lines of getting someone on as a intern for natural resources,
Yeah,
you know,
I don't agree,
but I don't
because
know
our
if,
need, our staff
indirectly,
needs-
maybe, indirectly.
I think that this adjunct type of thing, this cooperative, I think that's,
Well, we need to look at what majors that they offer over there, you know, whether it's environmental science, even to, you know, recreation management. There's a lot of things that colleges offer that we should be tapping into to
Plus
provide
we
an
got
extra
that-
set of hands.
the professor that's over there that is so great as far as the lake health issues. If he has some students that are working with him.
And I wonder if they have an IT department or IT majors that might be able to come in and, you know, so when you're there, Chris, ask what other,
Well, I will,
what other
and-
opportunities,
and
maybe we
I've
make a little
used-
short list of what we may need, you know, interns for,
Yeah.
IT, communications.
And I have used interns in the past and successfully, and I won't say successfully maybe from the project overall, because a lot of times you spend as much time with an intern training them as you get back from them. But when you look at the community service aspect of it and some of those positive things you can get out of the program of having those people, and that could even extend to working with the high school, someone's going to vocational school, hey, you can come out and work with our field crew for the summer.
Yeah.
But you're getting involved in the community and you're a job training person.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
So it takes some work, but I think it's worth the effort in the end.
Excellent.
But that's all I have today. I'd be happy to answer any more questions.
No.
That's enough for right now, but
Yes,
don't
sir.
go away.
Okay? You're right here.
Now we have a little unusual business of procedure regarding the Griffin Drive street light item. 3 meetings ago, we discussed this, and the board, with a motion and a second and a vote, tabled this item. Now, technically, this item is still on the table, which means it's kind of in limbo. So if we want to discuss this item tonight, we need a motion and a second to remove it from the table. So, depending on what the board wants to do.
Can we start with discussion first?
No. We have to remove the item from the table with a motion, a second, and a vote, and then get into whatever discussion you want on it.
Okay, well, I think because I made the motion to table it originally. I would make the motion to remove it.
Remove it from the table. All
I'll
right.
second.
All in favor of removing the Griffin streetlight proposal from the table so that we can discuss and consider it, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Is that a yes?
Yes.
4-0.
And so
All right.
now can I make a
Please.
Can I make a statement? So, after we had that meeting, I had reached out to April, because I was looking at the proposals and the different, you know, street lighting, and we were talking about, okay, whatever style you decide to go with, whether it's LED or if it's this versus that, well, then you have to look at our complete lighting plan for the district. So like Stony Brook has new lights that are a little different from what we have throughout the community. So the reason why I tabled it is because I think there's more conversation and planning needs to happen with this, whether it's who's paying for it. I think I've heard some people mention that maybe WCI should pay for it. I don't know why we didn't require them to put lighting in, or whoever the builder was at the time. So my purpose to take it off the table was to give staff time to research this a little bit more, because it's not just about Griffin Drive. We need a larger plan on what we're going to do as far as light replacement for the community for, you know, policy for years down the road.
Any other conversation at the moment on this?
We've recently spent $160,000. Somebody's proposing an additional $100,000. That's something that needs a little bit of consideration
Yeah.
for.
And I don't know if
Excuse me, just
go
one
ahead.
second. What was your 160 referring to, please?
Sidewalks.
And I don't know if the right decision is to, go with a lease model through FP&L or to purchase up front, and we have to look at what that's gonna cost us over time. I just think it's a bigger issue for us to jump into right now. It needs some time and consideration, and almost have a group that is looking at, something like that, whether it's a committee or, something along those
Correct.
lines.
We need some community input on this thing. The expenditures are starting, and this is something that's a community situation, and, yeah, there's.
And how does that feed in with the new landscaping plan or with the roads? I mean, there's a lot that goes in. So if we had someone that had maybe some expertise that would like to spearhead this from a committee perspective, maybe staff might, I don't know if you know anybody, but, or, if there's anyone that would like to volunteer for that, this would be a great project because it has short-term implications because people on Griffin, I mean, it's dark. I mean, we need something. But tied into the larger plan and what we may need to replace or whatever down the road, I think it's, we just need more time.
The memorandum from Tetra Tech also said that regardless of what we do, we're gonna need a modified DO from Lee County before we can proceed. Now, presumably, Mr. Attorney, we're gonna have a deal with WCI Lee County and Gateway Services before the snow flies, right?
Sure. That's the game plan, yes, sir.
Assuming that WCI stays in business the way they are, and et cetera, et cetera. Having said all of that, I think your idea of going about this in a detailed, fully understood idea where we have resident involvement is a very good way to proceed. Mr. Tinkle, you're looking like you have something to say. No? No. All right.
Can the record show that? That you didn't have anything to say?
That portion of the minutes will be verbatim.
So it'd be written.
Okay.
All right, let the record show then that the item on Griffin Drive street lighting is still alive, and that
We're gonna push it to committee.
we're gonna put together a committee to
Come up with some options.
To study the thing, and at the same time, see how it works together with the
Master plan.
all of the lights in the district
Yeah.
and the Lee County's DO that's apparently gonna be needed. All right, let's go then to supervisor comments. Do you have any?
No, I don't have anything else.
Margaret?
I do. I had actually spent a couple phone calls with Joe DeCerbo, and right before the meeting today, I was able to get a hold of him. And the update for the board is that we're looking to have him back here next week, next Thursday and Friday, to start working on phase 2, which would be the actual job functions with descriptions, those have already been, April's already been working on and had sent to him, and the salary ranges for that, and then looking to put those job descriptions in a form that we could eventually go out to look for people to fill those positions. So it's the next phase, we're gonna actually look at how quickly we can
Get that turned around?
get it turned around, and part of this is going to be renegotiating the contract, of course, with Severn Trent. So that all of this has to kind of fall into place in the correct order to get it implemented. So this is the next phase.
Great.
And I think we can phase that in, right? That's a phased approach? Okay.
Anything else?
Nope, that was it.
Gary?
Just bring you up to date.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm ready to adjourn this meeting if there isn't anything further. Anyone?
Nope.
We are adjourned.
Great, nice job.
What's going on with your browns? Holy smokes.
How about them Indians?
That's always good. That's a good.
My mother was